All right, so let's get into the results. Starting at 1080 offline, this is where things should be the most CPU bound. So this is where you'd expect to see the biggest separation. The 7800X3D comes in at 105 FPS average compared to 100 on the 7600X3D. That's about a 5% lead. The 1% lows are only about 2 to 3% apart, and the 0.1% lows are pretty much identical. So even though there is a small difference here in terms of actual gameplay feel, it was basically a wash. At 1440 offline, things look very similar. The 7800X3D still holds a small lead, about 4% in average FPS, but again, the lows are nearly identical. If you look at the actual numbers and compare them to 1080, the numbers are almost the same and the differences are almost the same. In 4K offline, the results are basically stacked on top of each other again. You've got around a 6% difference in average FPS. Lows are almost identical. And if you look at the numbers from all three tests, they're almost the same. So you can really see how CPU bound this game is. Even if we move up in resolution, the numbers basically stay the same. Now moving on to online raids at 1080, this is where things start to separate a little bit more than offline. The 7800X3D is about 7% ahead in average FPS, but more importantly, we've got a 4 to 5% difference on the 1% lows and a little bit over a 3% difference on the 0.1% lows. And yeah, it's not a massive difference, but the gap is slightly larger than it is in offline mode once you add the server, player, AI, and network variables. In 1440 online, the gap becomes even more consistent across the board. About 7% lead in average FPS, lows around 5 to 6% apart. In 4K online, the trend continues. The 7800X3D maintains about a 7% lead again in average FPS, with about the same gap in the lows as well. So no matter the resolution, the difference between the two chips is basically the same. So overall, the numbers were very close. The 7800X3D did have about a 7% advantage in average FPS, with a similar advantage in the lows. It's not a night and day difference, and without knowing beforehand, it would be very hard for me to tell which chip I was using. That's how close the performance actually feels. In terms of power draw and temps, they were basically identical. The 7800X3D pulled about 3% more power and was about 3% warmer. So technically there is a difference, but I'm going to call that a wash.